Hey, what's going on? Happy Sunday. Look, man, I'm in church trying to chill and everything, and I get these calls and messages responding back from these Amarillo hooligans. And I'm going to tell you this, man, please, your scare tactics, everything you're trying to do to scare people, it's not going to work. And I truly believe that y'all have to be smarter than what you guys are in this moment. Definitely when you also see videos of you at the party and you're saying, how did you get our information? Sweetheart, you're right.
Felita Bailey, known to many as FeFe, was a young woman with a reputation for being lively and outspoken. She lived in a close-knit community where almost everyone knew each other's names. Her days were often filled with family visits, neighborhood gatherings, and casual meetups with friends. People describe her as someone who could walk into a room and instantly make her presence known. She was familiar with many people in her area, and that network of connections meant she was rarely alone in public. Dylan Black, on the other hand, lived a quieter life. He preferred spending time with a smaller circle of friends and focused more on his personal goals. He had a calm personality and was often seen as a steady, grounded type. Dylan had his routines and stuck to them, rarely making unnecessary changes to his schedule. Those who knew him said he kept his matters private, avoiding unnecessary attention. Although their lifestyles differed, Felita and Dylan's paths had crossed enough times for them to recognize each other. They shared mutual acquaintances and occasionally appeared at the same events or locations. This familiarity made them aware of each other's presence in the community, even if they weren't close. Felita's social media activity was a strong part of her identity. She was active online, posting about her daily life, her thoughts, and occasionally her frustrations. Her posts often drew responses, both positive and negative, and she wasn't one to shy away from speaking her mind. That openness made her a figure people noticed, both in person and behind the screen. Dylan, by contrast, kept his online presence minimal. He had profiles but rarely shared personal updates. His posts were limited and cautious, focusing only on safe topics or occasional photographs. His reserved style created a contrast to Felita's more public approach, adding to the different ways they each handled attention. In the months before the incident, both Felita and Dylan continued their routines. Felita stayed visible in her community and active in her digital circles. Dylan remained consistent in his private habits. Their lives moved separately, but the environment they shared meant their actions and movements could still overlap without much planning. Neither could have predicted how quickly events would shift from ordinary to irreversible. Their individual stories, distinct in personality and lifestyle, would soon be tied together in a way that would leave a lasting impact on everyone who knew them. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Where are you tuning in from? What are your thoughts as this story unfolds? Your voice matters. These are real people, real tragedies, and real lessons we can't ignore. Share this video with someone you care about. It could make all the difference. Welcome to Unseen Crime Dossiers, your home for spine-chilling cases, haunting before mysteries, and deep dives into the world of crime. From jaw-dropping real-life events to groundbreaking forensic discoveries, we're here to uncover the truth behind the most gripping investigations. Step inside, examine the evidence, and lose yourself in the shadows of true crime. In the final hours before their deaths, Felita, FeFe, Bailey, and Dylan Black moved through what seemed like a normal day. Friends later recalled seeing social media posts from Felita that hinted at tension. Dylan was also active online, though his updates were more casual. Both appeared to be living their usual routines. But behind the scenes, there were signs that not everything was calm. As night fell, the atmosphere began to shift. People close to the situation reported a sudden burst of online activity from Felita's account, as if she was trying to send a message. There were cryptic phrases and half-completed thoughts that left followers wondering what she meant. Dylan, on the other hand, went quiet. His silence stood out to those who knew him well. Hours before the tragedy, the pair were spotted together. Eyewitnesses described them as tense, with little conversation between them. They moved quickly, avoiding direct interaction with anyone nearby. Some noted that Felita seemed distracted, often looking over her shoulder as if expecting someone. Dylan's expression was harder to read, but his body language appeared rigid and defensive. The location where the events unfolded was dimly lit, with only a few streetlights casting uneven glows. There was little activity in the area, making a quiet backdrop for what was about to happen. The setting added to the sense of isolation, leaving no immediate help within reach. By the time the confrontation began, there were no large crowds or witnesses nearby. Sounds of Ray's voices broke through the stillness, but the details of what was said remained unclear. Those who later reviewed camera footage noted sharp movements and sudden changes in position, suggesting a heated exchange that quickly spiraled out of control. What followed was swift and final. Both Felita and Dylan were left at the scene, lifeless before any emergency responders could arrive. The suddenness of the violence left even seasoned investigators struggling to understand the exact chain of events. The crime scene was sealed off within minutes of discovery. Detectives moved in, marking evidence and documenting every detail. From the placement of the bodies to the scattered belongings, each clue was collected in the hope of piecing together the final minutes of Felita Bailey and Dylan Black's lives. Police immediately began piecing together the events leading to the tragedy involving Felita Bailey and Dylan Black. They worked through phone records, surveillance footage, and interviews with people who had been close to the victims in their final days. Detectives focused on the last places both were seen alive and the interactions they had before their deaths. Each detail was carefully documented to create a clear picture of the timeline. Officers visited the neighborhoods where the incidents occurred, speaking with anyone who might have witnessed unusual behavior. Some neighbors recalled seeing unfamiliar vehicles in the area during the nights before the events. Others remembered loud arguments or people moving quickly away from certain spots. Every statement was noted as a possible lead, even if it seemed minor at first. Law enforcement also examined digital trails. Social media posts, private messages, and call logs were cross-referenced to determine if there had been threats, conflicts, or warnings before the tragedy. Investigators found connections between specific posts and real-life movement of the victims, creating a map of their final hours. This helped narrow down who might have had a motive or the opportunity to harm them. Evidence collection teams searched both crime scenes in detail. They looked for fingerprints, shell casings, footprints, and any discarded items that could link a suspect to location. Photographs were taken from every angle, and physical items were sealed and logged into evidence. Even small fragments like torn fabric or drop receipts were kept for forensic testing. Autopsy results were reviewed to determine the exact causes of death. This information was matched with a timeline of when each victim was last seen alive. Toxicology screenings were also performed to check for any substances that might have affected the victims before the incidents. The medical findings helped confirm or rule out certain theories the police were considering. Interviews with family members and friends provided insight into the victims' lives in the days before their deaths. Some described unusual behavior, sudden changes in routines, or recent arguments that could be relevant. These personal accounts gave investigators more context about possible tensions or threats that may have gone unnoticed by others. By the end of this stage, police had compiled a growing list of potential suspects and persons of interest. Patterns began to emerge in the evidence and testimonies, pointing toward a clearer understanding of what might have happened. The investigation was far from over, but the pieces were starting to fit together into a more defined story. Detectives worked quickly to piece together the final hours of Felita Bailey and Dylan Black. They reviewed camera footage from nearby businesses, hoping to capture movements before the crime. Footage showed vehicles driving through the area, but the view of the actual scene was partly blocked. Investigators noted several cars that passed at critical moments, each requiring follow-up. Crime scene technicians examined every item at the location. A phone found near the scene was collected for analysis. Officers also gathered shell casings and took photographs of tire marks. Each detail was logged, knowing even the smallest piece could connect to a suspect. The investigation stretched beyond the immediate area. Detectives spoke with people who had seen Felita and Dylan earlier in the day. They also reached out to acquaintances in different parts of the city, building a timeline of their interactions. Several witnesses mentioned seeing the pair together hours before the tragedy. Forensic specialists began their work on the physical evidence. Prints, DNA, and ballistic results would take time, but these findings could tie a weapon or person to the event. Officers also obtained warrants to check call records and messages from devices linked to both victims. This step aimed to reveal who they spoke with and where they traveled. Meanwhile, social media activity was closely reviewed. Investigators searched for signs of threats, disputes, or sudden warnings in the victims' posts and messages. Certain online exchanges appeared significant, prompting further questioning of those involved. The search for answers required coordination between multiple agencies. Local police, state authorities, and federal partners shared updates. Each team handled a part of the investigation, ensuring no possible lead was left unexplored. By the end of this phase, detectives had a clearer picture of the hours before the crime. They identified persons of interest and began preparing for interviews that could either confirm suspicions or lead to entirely new directions. The case was moving forward, step by step, through careful and deliberate work. Detectives began piecing together the final hours of Dylan Black and Felita Bailey's lives. Phone records became a central focus, revealing patterns of calls and messages in the days leading up to the tragedy. Investigators noted several unusual late-night contacts that seemed to stop abruptly just before the incident occurred. These details were cataloged and cross-checked with known associates. The crime scene team expanded their search area beyond the immediate location of the bodies. They canvassed surrounding streets, alleys, and nearby parking areas for discarded evidence. Items as small as a cigarette butt or torn fabric were carefully bagged and tagged for analysis. Surveillance footage from local businesses was also collected, with detectives studying every frame for movements or vehicles linked to the victims. Meanwhile, interviews continued with people from both Dylan's and Felita's circles. Detectives carefully documented discrepancies in timelines and statements. A few witnesses recalled seeing the pair together earlier in the day, while others insisted they had been apart. The inconsistencies pushed investigators to dig deeper into relationships and possible disputes that might have escalated. Autopsy results provided more clarity. Forensic pathologists detailed the injuries, the likely cause of death, and an estimated time frame when the incident occurred. This data allowed the investigative team to create a more precise sequence of events. Toxicology tests were also run, checking for any substances that might have impaired judgment or altered behavior. Attention then shifted to the digital trail. Social media accounts, text messages, and location histories were combed through. Investigators found cryptic posts and subtle hints that suggested tension or unresolved conflict. Every lead was logged, no matter how small, with the aim of constructing a clear narrative. The case began to develop potential persons of interest. Detectives didn't announce names publicly, but confirmed they were actively tracking down individuals who had close interactions with the victims in the days prior. These leads were pursued with urgency, as investigators knew that time was critical in preventing the trail from going cold. By the close of this phase, the investigation had moved from gathering scattered clues to forming a structured theory of events. The pieces were starting to fit together, pointing toward a specific chain of actions that could explain how Dylan Black and Felita Bailey ended up dead on the same day under such sudden and violent circumstances. In the days that followed, the community was caught between disbelief and mourning. Friends, family, and neighbors moved to the streets with heavy steps, still trying to comprehend how quickly life had turned upside down. Candlelight vigils were held, their flickering flames casting long shadows over tear-streaked faces. The names Dylan Black and Felita Bailey were now permanently etched into the town's collective memory, spoken in whispers and sighs. Police presence became a constant in the area, their patrol cars idling along the familiar blocks. While the investigation pressed forward, the tension in the air was palpable. Residents locked their doors earlier, avoided late-night walks, and kept their eyes on every unfamiliar face that passed. Even in daylight, the sense of unease clung stubbornly to the community, refusing to loosen its grip. Social media became both a source of unity and division. Posts honoring the victims mixed with speculation and personal theories about what had really happened. Every update from authorities was dissected, every small detail magnified. For some, the constant scrolling brought comfort, a way to stay connected. For others, it only deepened the pain and confusion. Family members of both Dylan and Felita faced the unbearable task of making funeral arrangements, while the weight of unanswered questions hung over them. In quiet moments, Their grief was almost too heavy to bear, and yet public displays of strength became a necessity. The loss had stripped away the normalcy of their lives, leaving behind a hollow space no words could fill. Community leaders tried to bring people together, organizing memorial events and urging unity. At these gatherings, stories of the victims' lives were shared, memories of kindness, laughter, and resilience. Each recollection painted a fuller picture of who they were beyond the tragedy, reminding everyone that their identities were not defined by the manner of their deaths. Yet as the days turned to weeks, reality settled in. Life moved forward for many, but for those closest to Dylan and Felita, time seemed to stand still. Every familiar location, a corner store, a neighborhood park, a quiet street, now carried the weight of their absence. The silence left behind was almost louder than the events that had taken them. By the close of the month, the flowers at the memorials had wilted, but the emotional scars remained fresh. The story of Dylan Black and Felita Bailey had become more than a headline. It was a reminder how fragile and unpredictable life could be. And for those who knew them, the only certainty was that their memory would never fade. The night air was cool, but tension made it feel heavy. Dylan Black was seen pacing outside his home, speaking to someone on the phone. His tone was sharp, clipped, almost as if every word carried urgency. Inside, Felita Bailey was finishing a video call with a close friend. She appeared calm, unaware that the night was about to turn deadly. Shortly before midnight, neighbors reported hearing the muffled sound of an argument. It wasn't loud enough to make out the words, but the rhythm of raised voices suggested it wasn't a casual disagreement. A few minutes later, the street fell silent again, as though nothing had happened. That silence, however, would soon be broken. Just after 12:15 a.m., two figures were seen moving quickly across the driveway. One appeared to be Dylan, his hands in motion, as though gesturing forcefully. The other figure, shadowed by the dim light, remained harder to identify. The faint glow from a nearby street lamp caught just enough detail to hint that something was wrong. A sudden noise shattered the stillness, a single loud crack, followed by another. The sound echoed against the houses, jolting nearby residents from their beds. A few seconds later, there was a sharp metallic thud, like something hitting the ground. Within moments, the lights inside Dylan's home flickered off. When first responders arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. Dylan was found lying near the edge of the driveway, his body motionless. Just a short distance away, Felita was discovered inside the front hallway, collapsed with the door slightly ajar. The positions of their bodies painted a chilling picture of how quickly events had unfolded. Police cordoned off the area, their flashlights sweeping across the driveway and front steps. Shell casings were recovered near the walkway, and faint smears on the concrete hinted at a desperate attempt to escape or reach help. The investigation had only begun, but the weight of what had occurred was already clear. By dawn, the news had spread beyond the neighborhood. 2 lives were gone, and the unanswered questions hung heavy in the air. The final hours of Dylan Black and Felita Bailey had ended in violence, leaving behind only silence, flashing lights, and the haunting memory of that night. The courtroom was silent, except for the slow shuffle of papers and the faint hum of the air conditioner. Reporters filled the back rows, their pens ready to capture each word. On one side sat the family of the victims, their faces pale and drawn. On the other, the young boy accused of taking their lives, sitting motionless, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The judge's gaze swept across the room, making sure every person understood the seriousness of the moment. The prosecutor began by outlining the events as they believed they happened. Each detail was laid out with precision, from the discovery of the bodies to the alleged timeline leading up to the crime. The jurors listened closely, their expressions unreadable. Photos were shown on a large screen, the images drawing quiet gasps from the gallery. The weight of what had happened hung in the air like a heavy shadow. When the defense took the floor, the tone shifted. They painted a picture of a boy lost in a world he could not fully control, someone shaped by circumstances beyond his years. They questioned the evidence, pointing to gaps in the investigation and raising doubts about the timeline. Every word was chosen carefully, meant to place hesitation in the minds of the jurors. Witnesses came forward, each one adding another piece to the puzzle. Some spoke with tears in their eyes, recalling the kindness of the victims. Others gave account of arguments and tension that had built over time. The testimonies layered together, creating a complex picture that was neither fully clear nor entirely simple. The jury sat still, absorbing every word. Outside the courthouse, the community remained divided. Some saw the boy as a cold and calculated killer, while others believed he was a troubled child in need of help. News outlets replayed clips of the trial endlessly, each station offering its own interpretation. Social media was flooded with debates, the case becoming a topic that reached far beyond the small town. As the day ended, the judge called for a recess. The jurors were escorted out, the lawyers packed their files, and the boy was led away in silence. The families remained seated for a moment longer, as if unsure how to face the world outside the courtroom doors. The air felt thick with the weight of everything that had been said. Night fell, but the case was far from over. The truth, whatever it might be, was still tangled in questions, testimony, and evidence yet to be examined. For now, the town waited, caught between justice and uncertainty, knowing the final decision would change everything forever. The days that followed were filled with an eerie silence. Felita's name still echoed across town, but the shock had shifted into a stubborn determination among those closest to her. While the police claimed to be making progress, there was still a frustrating absence of concrete answers. Each new day without clarity only deepened the wound for her family and friends. Behind closed doors, whispers grew louder. A neighbor, who had remained quiet during the initial investigation, finally admitted to seeing a shadowy figure near Felita's street on the night of her death. This revelation stirred fresh urgency. Detectives returned to old evidence, determined to connect the dots they might have overlooked before. Social media became a parallel investigation. Strangers, self-proclaimed crime solvers, dug into Felita's life, pulling up old photos, posts, and comments. Some theories were wild and unfounded, but others hinted at details that eerily matched fragments of the official investigation. It became impossible to tell where truth ended and speculation began. A small breakthrough came when surveillance footage from a nearby shop was uncovered. At first glance, it showed nothing unusual, just passing cars and quiet streets. But one frame, time-stamped just minutes before the tragedy, caught a blurred vehicle slowing near Felita's block. Investigators leaned in, magnifying the image, hoping the grainy shapes could reveal the missing link they desperately sought. The atmosphere in town shifted again. People who had stayed silent began sharing what they knew, whether out of fear, guilt, or a sense of duty. Every new detail, no matter how small, felt like another piece falling into place. Patterns began to emerge, patterns that pointed towards someone who had been hiding in plain sight. The weight of the truth seemed to hover just out of reach. Every conversation, every lead, brought investigators closer to pulling back the final curtain. The question was no longer if they would find connection, but when. And in the quiet hours of a long night, one detective reviewing the case files paused, eyes fixed on a name that had been there all along, one that might tie everything together in a way no one had expected. Here at Unseen Crime Dossiers, we're driven by a mission to uncover hidden realities, honor forgotten voices, and keep their memories alive. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something, there's more coming that will challenge you even deeper. Make sure to hit subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a case. We're dropping new episodes regularly, and trust us, what's ahead is even more chilling. Before you go, we want to hear from you. What moment hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments. Your perspective matters, and your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay alert, stay informed, and never stop seeking the truth, because every life deserves to be heard.